Jets training camp is here, and we need to get into all the juicy details with a very special guest. Let's roll, baby. Zoinks! It is unequivocally the Super Bowl for New York Jet fans. Field Yates, baby. Field Gosh darn Yates. Let's bring him on the show. Come on, people. Connor Rodgers is joining the show. What's up, Connor? But Trevor Gosh darn Sycamore, baby. For me, personally, my favorite New York Jet of all time.
Wow, it's great to be on. What an intro that was right there.
Paul, nobody does an intro like you, man.
Paul, you give the best intro of literally any podcast that I've ever been.
I'm gonna lose my gosh darn bananas. New York Jets training camp, baby. The players arriving today. It's kind of a pomp and circumstance. Some of the fashionista stuff is going on. Practice doesn't get underway till tomorrow, but it revs my engine, baby. Aaron Rodgers is a Jet, and there's so much juicy stuff to get into. And I've been circling the wagons on this one for a while. This is an interview I've wanted to do for a while. I don't see this young lady do many interviews often, so let's make it happen and let's bring her in. Rivka Boord of JetsXFactor.com, baby. Rivka, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, let me tell you, I'm going to be honest. One of the things that stands out about you, Rivka, in all my readings of your wonderful work at JetsXFactor.com is you put a little mustard on your sandwich. You're not afraid to throw it out there. You got some takes, and I'm like reading it like whether I agree or disagree. I'm like, what in God's green earth? Yes. Finally, someone said it. So, Rivka, I'm going to be honest. That's one of the big reasons I want to get you on the show. You seem to be willing to put it out there.
Well, I mean, what's writing if not being willing to put out there what you believe and what you think? You got fans who disagree. I got something on Twitter actually one time saying, "I saw your article. You are wrong."
Blunt, right to the point.
Yeah,
I will tell you. And Rivka, you want to stay as far away from Twitter and social media in general, I would suggest. You get a lot of action. Let's just put it that way, coming on the social media sphere. But I guess that's just the nature of the business that we have to get into. So first off, we'll talk about the newsy bits. I had other things to get into because we scheduled this in advance, but some news is happening naturally as Jets are reporting here. Denzel Mims, he's kicked the bricks. This guy's getting tossed out of the... Don't even show up, pal. Brian Costello on the Scoopski that either, and as we're recording this, that either Denzel Mims will be cut or traded before training camp even gets underway. Rivka, are you surprised that this is happening now? I'm not so sure everyone thought he was a roster lock per se, so maybe this inevitably happening, but happening right off the get-go. Very interesting.
So, yeah. I may be a little bit surprised that it's right out of the gate. I did think it would come down to roster cuts at the end. But in terms of actually happening, this is 2 years in the making. Meaning really from the minute that Robert Saleh became the head coach, there were rumors coming out about how he wasn't doing well with the coaching staff, didn't do well in LaFleur's system. And it just didn't work. I don't know what happened to Mims exactly. I don't know if he just lost confidence. I don't know if being forced to play multiple roles when his role is a Z receiver and he always should have been a Z receiver, and trying to force him to do other things was foolish. But I mean, it's unfortunate because the guy had a lot of talent coming out, could have been this big contested catch guy. But, you watch him on the field the last couple of years, the guy cannot catch anymore. And I don't know why. I don't know if someone can get his confidence back and get him catching right. But in terms of this happening, I mean, Saleh basically said as much when he said that he has a chance to make the roster. That was the first time that we ever heard an acknowledgement from the Jets, staff that he wasn't a lock to make it. So, yeah, the fact that it's happening now is surprising, but the fact it's happening, period, is not surprising in the least.
Yeah, definitely not. And again, normally, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, Rivka, because I heard Joe Caparoso say this, that Badlands does a great job. I've also had a very similar take that even just heading in, the 90-man roster is currently constructed heading to camp. I believe there's 5 roster locks in my mind at wide receiver, and in no particular order, that being Garrett Wilson, Allen Lazard, Corey Davis, Mecole Hardman, and Randall Cobb being the 5 in whatever order you want. And then maybe there's room for a wide receiver 6. And if that's the case, normally wide receiver 6 plays special teams to make the roster. Denzel Mims, taking old gander at the old stat sheet, 1% of the special team snaps last year, which, by the way, for those counting at home, three snaps, according to Pro Football Reference, is how many he played last year. So, again, it did seem inevitable, but kind of maybe the Jets did him a favor by, quite frankly, cutting bait now. Maybe because I believe the roster cuts have shifted back. Now the NFL teams could do a ritual bloodletting, so to speak. We're not having the waves anymore, although we may still get the waves of the NFL team's own volition. So maybe they're doing him a solid here because maybe you'll have a better chance, of making a team's roster with a potential full training camp as opposed to getting dumped in the middle or late August.
So, yes, definitely. I think they would have done him more of a solid to trade him last year.
Well, that's true.
They probably also would have gotten more for him, despite the fact that he was coming off a bad year, because he was still closer to his rookie year, solid performance. And, the word was that they wanted, a 4th-round pick for him last year, which was never really going to happen. But I still think they would have done him and themselves more of a solid by just trading him last year because they clearly didn't have much use for him. When Corey Davis went down, they put him in a bit, but they were never seriously going to integrate him into their offense. So they should have just traded him last year. But yes, this year, definitely not leaving him to the Wolves when the final roster cutdowns happen would be helpful, although it remains to be seen when this actually does happen because they're still saying they are trying to trade him. So we'll see. I mean, I had no illusions that Mims was going to make the roster this year. To me, it was a foregone conclusion that he was done.
Are you jumping on the bandwagon that you believe that those 5 names I mentioned in some form or fashion are locks to make the roster in your opinion?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, it would be very surprising to see any one of those players not make the roster. The 6th wide receiver, which I'm assuming they're going to run with 6.
Okay.
As you said, just because of the special teams aspect, I think also Corey Davis has too much of an injury history. I think they will carry a 6th receiver. Plus, Davis is in the final year of his contract. I think they want to see what they have. It's one of the reasons why they have several undrafted free agents on the roster, right now on the 90-man. So I think, it'll be between – I think Jerome Cap has a good chance over there.
Ooh, okay.
I think I picked Irv Charles in my original 53-man simply because of his experience with the team. That was a simple thing. I said, I think that they value someone who, has been with the team, even though it is a new offensive staff, so he's learning, but they've had him around for a little while. So I think I picked him with the inside track, but I could see any of those guys making it. Gibson, and any one of them really.
Yeah, because the names Jason Brownlee, Xavier
Exactly.
Gibson, Cap, to your point, has made some waves as well, so that'll be interesting. So let's get into it. So that's the Mimsy piece, and obviously if anything breaks during the show, we'll react to some of that. But again, one of the reasons I brought you on is you're not afraid to say what's on your mind, Rivka Boord of Jets X Factor. And one of the articles that made me both laugh and kind of everything, like I just went, wow, okay, she put it out there. She, and one of them is your article you wrote of 5 Hard Knocks training camp storylines to pay attention to and 1 to ignore. And, people, of course, feel free to check out the article. You should. Rivka does amazing work for Jets X Factor, and so does the whole team for that matter. But the one that you had to ignore on the sheet here, as we have it here in front of us, was the Zach Wilson situation, the narrative, rather, on the Zach Wilson situation. And in this piece, you call them, quote, one of the worst backups in the league statistically. And there were some other comments made into this that you are not a Zach Wilson fan. And quite frankly, like if we're not to put words in your mouth, but we'll have this, interesting chat here about it. Like Zach Wilson, as he has these inevitable opportunities, where he looks good, we're like, whoa, Zach Wilson, baby. You're like, let's just cut the train right there. It seems like you're suggesting, Rivka, on that before it even happens.
So I'll tell you honestly, when the Jets were looking for the number 2 overall pick, I don't pretend to be an expert film breakdown person or anything, but I just watch quarterbacks, and the first thing I look at is their mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
How do you throw the football? How are you set? Are you setting properly? Are you throwing it properly? And Wilson wasn't as bad in college as he was in the NFL with that, but he never had good mechanics. He threw all with his arm from day one. So, the fact that he got good results makes you think, okay, maybe he's like Aaron Rodgers. Maybe he can get away with bad mechanics and still play well. But when you saw those mechanics translate into the kind of stuff that we saw from Wilson, not being able to throw screen passes, overthrowing, underthrowing, throwing in every which direction, combined with just seeming, he gets his brain just locks on the field. Like he can't process quickly enough. Until I see Wilson's mechanics actually improve, I don't really care what else I'm seeing from him. I don't care what the result is. If the process isn't good, I'm not sold on him at all. So again, I want Zach Wilson to succeed. I wanted him to succeed from the time they drafted him. I'm not one of those fans who said I'd rather be right than be, or analysts who'd rather be right than be, than have the player succeed. But I just think, again, we've done all this. We've seen him look good in pads. We've seen him, make the wow throws and things like that. But even when those happen, a lot of times he's late on the read. It wasn't a good throw. It was a better catch than throw. He didn't throw it accurately. If you can't make that accurate throw with no pressure in your face, if your mechanics are bad in practice, it's just not going to translate to an NFL field. So I'm very skeptical about him until proven otherwise.
I just got to say, I am fully embracing as myself, obviously, as a Jets fan and all the media stuff we all get to do as well. I'm fully ready to overreact. Oh, my goodness, look at Zach Wilson in a T-shirt and shorts, baby. He's back. He's going to be there after Aaron Rodgers and all that, jazz happening. But I circle it back to you, Rivka, on this. So this has been there's been chatter among social media, although it doesn't sound like it sounds like it would just be outside the room chatter in terms of getting an actual QB2 that's done this before. Names have been thrown out like Nick Foles and Teddy Bridgewater that either have connections, whether to the coaching staff, the general manager, or the team in general, about maybe having a guy who's a little bit more reliable. Again, from everything I've been trying to gather, speaking with like guys like Zach Rosenblatt and trying to ask some people, they're like, nah, it's Zach Wilson. He's the guy. Do you agree or disagree with that decision?
So I don't, in terms of what Rosenblatt said and everyone else said, I would agree. I think Zach Wilson's going to be the QB2. In terms of whether I agree with the decision, I don't. I can't fault them for doing it because Wilson is counting $9 million against their cap. So, and we don't know exactly what Rodgers is going to count against the cap this year, but just in terms of investing at specific positions, it's an awful lot of money to invest in a QB2 and bringing in another backup quarterback who's likely going to, we're not talking about, if you're talking about a Teddy Bridgewater, he's not going to take a veteran minimum. He's a guy who, could still see himself as a borderline starter. I just don't think they're willing to invest that kind of money into the position. And that's why I can't fault them for it. And I understand it, even though I don't necessarily, if it were up to me, I would say if you're going all in on this year, let's say Rodgers has to miss a game or has to miss a few plays. We saw last season, Joe Flacco basically lost the Jets the game against Buffalo with literally one series. So, having, people always think, if Rodgers goes down, our season is done anyway. And this was sort of my thought process last year when they kept, Mike White and Joe Flacco as the backup quarterbacks. I was like, well, if Wilson goes down, the season's over. And that's not necessarily the case. If they go down for a long period of time, yes. But if a guy misses a few series or a game or even 2 games, you need someone who can hold down the fort. And I'm just, again, I watched that Jaguars game. Oh. And we're not talking about the Jaguars defense was not the 85 Bears last year. I understand that the weather was nasty, but if you're putting in Chris Streveler over Zach Wilson, Rodgers better stay healthy for the whole year.
You, me, and quite frankly, I think even the team, because like to your point with Zach Wilson being the QB2, partly because of a financial decision, partly, well, he was a number 2 overall pick for Pete's sake. And like, do we sell him off for a half a bag of beans and look like idiots? So like, I think there's a lot of factors into that decision, but I think all of them are saying, okay, all right, Aaron Rodgers, you've been healthy predominantly 2018. Since 2018, I think he's missed maybe 2 games. One was like COVID. So, like, you know, he has a very good track record recently of staying healthy, although, again, Father Time is undefeated. So I think they are saying, like, oh, boy, just stay healthy, pal. We don't have to worry about QB2. And plus, for the Zach Wilson pitch that has been sold to us, the fans, the media, and everywhere else, like, hey, we want him to do a full reset. And in theory, he will be able to do that. If Aaron Rodgers is just rocking, he's just going to be, you know, hopefully by osmosis doing something and learning it in the QB room. Circling it back around, though, we have preseason coming up. My expectation is Aaron Rodgers, joggers. I don't see any Aaron Rodgers happening, as much as I'm sure it would buzz us a little bit to see him in a game for a series or so. I just don't think that's going to happen. Let's start there. Do you agree with that?
I agree. I think whatever slight inclination they would have had to put Rodgers in for a series was completely eliminated by Zach Wilson's injury last season.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, and I think you're 100% right. So is this the Zach Wilson show? So the Jets have 4 preseason games. Again, NFL historically used to always have 4, and then the Hall of Fame game would give people 5. Now they've eliminated it, so Jets in particular, and the Browns for that matter, will have 4. Everyone else will have 3. Is this the full Zach Wilson show? Is it buckle your seatbelt? He's getting just an absolute banana amount of reps throughout these preseason games, and let's just see how he responds and reacts and performs in these games. Is that your expectation?
Yes. You know, and to that point, if he really looks that bad in preseason, perhaps they could reconsider their position.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I mean, because look, we're not talking about a guy who looked so great in preseason last year on the couple of plays he made before he got injured. So, you know, if he really looks like the same guy that we saw for most of last season, maybe they could reconsider their position. Also, I mean, you know, again, we're talking about 2 seasons with a guy who did get injured a couple of times. That could always happen and force their hand. Yeah, but I do expect to see Wilson for the most part. You know, you will see Boyle maybe at the end, but I think this will be a full Zach Wilson, you know, display showcase. But what you mentioned about a reset, that was one of my points in my article. I said, if you're going to reset Zach Wilson, you need to reset him. You cannot say we gave him a few months and we think we're going to fix everything, especially when those few months were him away from the team. You know, if you really want to get his mechanics reset, that's going to take a long time. So even last year, taking him out of bubble wrap, you know, right after they put him into it, you know, it's just, it's unrealistic. If you're really saying that we're going to reset him, he really should be the quarterback 3 who's redshirting, as he should have essentially in his rookie season. And, you know, and just sit and really focus on his mechanics, focus on reading the field, you know, all the things that he's just done so poorly at. It's like, you know, again, these kinds of things don't usually work, but if you're going to do it, you have to commit to that. You can't say, well, you're the next man up, but we're resetting you. It's not going to work.
All right, let's, again, we're speaking with Rivka. Gosh darn Boord here, baby, on the program. I'm fired up. It's Jets training camp. Jets X Factor. It's a freaking bonanza. Look, I got the green lights, the green strobe lights going on here. We're having a rave party in the radio studio. It's fantastic. Speaking of the quarterback position, Rivka, with the new rule, and for those who don't, you might as well call it the 49ers rule, that you can have this quote unquote emergency quarterback that can come in if the first 2 guys get injured, but that third quarterback has to be on the 53-man roster according to this new NFL rule. Now, the numbers kind of vary if you study the analytics of which teams carry 2, which teams carry 3 over the last decade or so, but this new rule, do you think that really ensures, and maybe it was going to happen anyway, that the Jets are going to have 3 quarterbacks on that 53-man roster?
So I would have said no originally, but just thinking about it and the fact that they brought in Tim Boyle with his Packers roots, I think that, yeah, he will be on the roster. Even though I think in my predictions I wrote no, but I do think that he's going to be on the roster because, you know, should the absolute worst happen, and especially considering, you know, when you think about the 49ers rule, Josh Johnson was not originally going to leave that game, even though his head slammed the turf. I mean, if you were watching that game, he clearly should have been evaluated for a concussion, but he was just going to go in for the next play until they signaled and said, no, you need to take him out of the game. And yeah, of course he had a concussion because his head slammed the turf. I think the fact that you can a player can be pulled out of the game from an external source means that you need to have that backup, because it's not as if the guy can just say, I'm ready to go. It's an independent evaluator, which means what happens if you get stuck in you could really get caught in the lurch, unlike in the past where, it was about the player's own ability to just play through it.
Jets legend Josh Johnson. Let's give a moment for our boy Double J. That's absolutely fantastic. All right, let's get into some other storylines here for the New York Jets as we're speaking with Rivka Boord here on the program. One of the ones I'm curious about, I don't know where you stand. I know where several Jets X Factor people stand. I don't know if you guys kind of swarm up and you're like, this is our take and this is where we are. We don't give a flying hoot where anyone else is. But Dalvin Cook. Like, to me, I've been slamming the table. I've got questions with everyone in the backfield. The torn ACL, Breece Hall. Is he being a day 3 pick? Michael Carter freaking sucked last year, 3.5 yards per catch. I mean, it was disgusting. And then Zonovan Knight had a little pop. You're like, oh, and then fizzle. Oh. So, like, I've got questions about everybody. So I would like another guy in that room, whether that's Kareem Hunt maybe or Zeke. But let's have the Dalvin Cook conversation. Are you interested in Dalvin Cook? Do you reject Dalvin Cook? If he texts you up, are you responding? I mean, that's what we want to know. Yeah.
So first of all, I think before Michael Nania wrote his article about why the Jets shouldn't get Dalvin Cook, I wrote one of my own. So okay. We had this conversation when the buzz was still starting, and again, we're both numbers analytics people, so we look at the numbers. We also watch the film. And what you see with Dalvin Cook is a guy who's taking exactly what the offensive line gives him and nothing more. Nothing at all more. So he was running behind the league's 3rd best offensive line run blocking. Mm-hmm. And he got what he got behind the league's 3rd best offensive line. And so, for example, I've heard other Jets YouTubers say, well, do you think Zonovan Knight would have been able to do that? And my answer is yes. I believe, yes, he's not as fast as Dalvin Cook, but he also breaks more tackles. I believe that he, if you give him the space to work with, and Izzy, forget about it. Izzy, for sure, you give him the space, he will get what Dalvin Cook got. I'm not saying Izzy is Dalvin Cook. I'm just saying that Dalvin Cook, at his age and with the tread on his tires and based on what he showed last year, is simply not going to take anything more than the offensive line gives him. And yes, I share your concerns about the running backs. I really do. Breece Hall coming off the ACL tear, we don't even know if he's going to be ready for week 1. We don't know what he's going to look like when he comes back. The timing on an ACL tear is long, and so we don't necessarily know what he's going to look like. Then you have Izzy again, a mid-round pick, has some vision issues, doesn't break a lot of tackles. Knight, fizzled after 3 games. Carter was atrocious last year. I share those concerns. I just don't believe that Cook is going to solve any of those problems. I would be willing to bet that if the offensive line run blocks well, this group of 4 running backs will do just as well as Dalvin Cook would do. Additionally, and this is the clincher for Michael, I think, is that Cook is really bad at all the other things you care about in a running back. He's a horrible pass protector, and he's been that since he came into the league, one of the worst in the league. So you can't really use a guy like that on 3rd down. He fumbles a lot, which can hurt, running backs who fumble can hurt their team more than they help, even with big plays or with consistent. Just fumbles really are killers. And he drops everything. One of the worst drop rates in the league. So, we're talking about a back who maybe a few years ago would have been worth it because he was still a very dynamic runner and broke a lot of tackles and did his thing. At this point, he's starting to show that he's on the downside of his career. He doesn't bring the peripherals that you want in a running back. I'm not completely against bringing in another back, but I don't want it to be Dalvin Cook.
Gosh, Rivka, I am hoping, because we mentioned this earlier, and I love that you made this kind of point of delineation that, you can have a take, right? Like your Zach Wilson thing that you said, but you can still hope that, he proves you wrong in some way, that he just pops. You're like, oh, thank God, I was wrong. Great. Or in this Dalvin Cook sense, he is. So I'm telling you, even though I stand on the other side, for the love of everything that's holy, I hope Michael Carter, Zonovan, all these guys, that the offensive line blocks it correctly, that they can do it as effectively as Cook. Again, I pray to the football gods above. I hope you're right, because it just makes me super nervous if we go in like last year, Brees Hall goes down. We're like, man, that stinks. He was such a big player. But, we got James Robinson. We got Michael Carter. Yeah, we can figure it out. And then just, and I was like, oh, Jesus. Oh, good Lord, have mercy. I started having panic attacks. And I was like, this thing. And then we get to the opposite. I'm like, boy, if we're Brees Hall's recovery, who knows? None of us know how long it's going to take. I mean, I'm recovering from an ACL right now. Like, I have no idea what that's going to look like. But, that's why I just want that warm, tingly feeling, in my belly. When I go to bed at night, I want to feel comfortable like, yeah, we got him. We'll be okay. And just kind of, let the head hit the pillow. I'm just a little concerned. So hopefully, Rivka, you're right. That would make me feel a lot better.
So let me just add in another hot take.
Please do.
I think this is actually a very hot take because I don't think most people believe this. If Brees Hall had stayed healthy, but AVT had still gotten injured, and in the last few games of the season specifically, I think Brees Hall would not have done much better than Zonovan Knight or Michael Carter.
Oh my!
He would have been better, but I don't think he would have been that much better because literally both those guys. Look, Carter was bad from before any of the other injuries happened. Carter pretty much after the first game of the season, where I remember watching him against the Ravens, watching both of them, Carter and Hall, and being like, "Hey, Carter's still better than Hall," and then it all went downhill from there. So it was, Carter, I don't give a free pass to for the blocking because he was bad even when Hall was gaining, doing all his stuff. Carter was running straight into people. He wasn't breaking tackles. He just wasn't doing anything. But I give Knight a bit of a free pass because when you watch those later games, he had no chance. And I don't think you cannot, when you're being hit 3 yards in the backfield on every play, there's only so much you can do. I mean, unless you're Barry Sanders and every so often you're going to break a long one. But Barry Sanders got hit in the backfield more than anyone in NFL history. And he had more negative plays. And that's you're talking about, the great Barry Sanders. So I think Hall would have run into a similar situation where by the end of the season, maybe he would have had a couple more big plays because he broke something or whatever. But I think for the most part, you would have seen a lot of the same things of just running straight into a line because the blocking was that bad.
Yeah, and going back to it, a lot of the experts, insiders that cover the team, they believe that as currently constructed outside of someone obviously being added to the room, that Michael Carter's the projected starter. And like I said, the other thing that scares me about Michael Carter is he's small. And again, no offense, as a fellow vertically challenged guy, I understand the problems that come with that in the world. But like he's just not explosive. Like one of the things I saw in his first year is that, and he even admitted it after the year, was like, you would think, oh man, he's going to the house. Ow. Caught from behind. Oh, and then like he said, man, what I want to try to do is talking to Jets media is, I want to get like a step faster. So if you're small, you better be like Darren Sproles. Like, okay, he was small, but he was explosive as hell. So like, you're like, okay, I lack a little bit of this, but I gain this, like Daredevil. Okay, he's blind, but okay, he's got some other superpowers that all of a sudden are heightened a little bit. The fact that Michael Carter can't run away from anybody and he's super small, like that's the thing that concerns me about him being, because again, when Brees Hall originally went down last year, all these Jet fans like, we're fine. We got Michael Carter. I'm like, we got Michael Carter. What the hell does that mean? So that's where I was going. So hopefully, right, to your point, that again, if the offensive line is blocking well, maybe he doesn't have to be this dynamic home run hitter. But if he just does his job along with everybody else, maybe that should be enough to balance the offense. So
I'm a bigger Knight person personally. I think that the reason that when they originally elevated Knight, one of the things that Saleh said about him is that he's a one-cut runner, right? That he gets upfield quicker. I think one of the issues with Carter is he was just missing his reads. And I'm not saying Knight's reads were perfect. He had, again, he was an undrafted free agent for a reason. But I do think that between the fact that he gets to his reads quicker and he breaks more tackles, plus he showed in the limited sample size, he showed better signs as a pass protector and as a receiver. I would be more comfortable seeing what Knight can do over having Carter. Look, again, I don't really know why Carter suddenly fell off the map last year because as a rookie, he was good. He wasn't, again, to your point, he wasn't, he's not this explosive runner. That's why they drafted Brees Hall, because Carter's never going to be your big, your home run hitter. But I prefer in a running back a guy who can consistently get you the yardage that you need from a guy who's just a home run hitter but averages a yard and a half per carry the rest of the time.
Yeah, I think Michael, he did the, I'm going to mess up the principle, but basically, grading out the 90-man roster and kind of like ranking them. And then I'm just like reading along, oh, this is nice. And then I went, Zonovan 19th. I was like, what the hell? And again, he admits in there that, he's projecting a little bit, but he just loves what he sees. But I was like, good Lord have mercy. The guy that made the Jets 53-man roster initially, and then they're like, let's brush you aside. You're on the practice squad. And no one touched him because the practice squad protection rules disappeared. No one touched him, and they're like, all right, we'll bring you up, you bastard. Chicago, let's go. And then he starts rolling. But I was like, whoa, okay, so the Jets X Factor people stock up on Zonovan Knight. You guys could be, with some, I know the receipts thing is the thing. You guys could be doing some receipts maybe in the middle of the season if on Zonovan Knight, if that ends up being correct on your guys' prognostications.
I mean, we've been dead wrong before many times. We've also, and I'm saying we as if when we are actually in agreement, which we aren't always. We definitely have differences of opinion. I think a lot of times we defer to Joe Blewett and the film, the biggest film guy. So I think that he said that Knight is a very good third running back. Said you don't want him as your first and not necessarily as your second. Said as your third or fourth running back, he's really good and he's a little bit underrated in that way. Again, Michael and I believe that he could take the next step given more opportunities behind better blocking. But I'm also assuming that AVT being back will make a huge difference. I'm not so concerned about his injury because I feel like it was a little fluky. And it's not like we're talking about a knee injury. We're talking about a triceps. Like I think he'll be back and ready to go. And I believe that just having him, even if Becton, whatever happens with him, even if whether it's McGovern or Tipman, I think that just having AVT back will give better blocking and will allow the running backs a little bit more leeway.
Let's dabble in a couple other areas before we get you out of here, Rivka. I know what you want to say to this question, so feel free to just do it if that's where you want to go. The starting free safety for the New York Jets, September 11th, against the Buffalo Bills, will be whom?
Obviously you know who I want to say. I think that my articles have given enough indication to show that I do not believe that Tony Adams will be the starting free safety, much as I would want him to be. I don't know if they plan to use Adrian Amos in that role. I don't know if they plan to alternate Amos and Whitehead, because they did play Whitehead in the single high at times and Joyner in the box last year. It wasn't exclusively Joyner, although it was primarily him. So I don't know if they plan on switching them off. I'm not sure what their plan is. I have not seen any indication so far that they plan on using Tony Adams as a starting free safety, although I believe he's the only player who has the range to play the position. I'm very concerned about that. It's one of my biggest concerns, as it's stated in my Hard Knocks article, that I think that, I don't understand what they were thinking at the position. But I do think that they're planning on rolling with Amos and Whitehead, and it scares me.
Yeah, I will say this, that I know we started this off with the newsy topic of us doing the show of Denzel Mims, and there's so many Jet fans that are still on that bandwagon. As I look out into the ocean, I see a few Jet fans are still on the ship as it's kind of it's kind of sinking, going down, and I'm just kind of salute. I respect it. The same player I'm doing it for is Ashton Davis, because in theory, on paper, this athletic track and field center fielder, and then when the Browns game happens last year, I'm like, wow, 1 for 1. Look, he was on the field for that one snap. He had a pick. I mean, if you you're an analytics person, Rivka. If you do that across 400 snaps, this guy has 400 interceptions. I mean, the facts are the facts. So that's a guy that I'm like, Ashton Davis, he's making this roster, baby. Let's let money down.
I feel like, again, when we fall in love with a player, especially in the pre-draft process, and then you just so want them to be good because, again, they look good on paper. And I've had players like this before where, you think they're going to be good. And for me, Mims would have been more like that than Davis. But, I like those athletic. I've had a lot of athletic receivers that I really fell in love with and then just fell off the map because they can't do anything else besides be athletic. I think Davis is just, that ship has sailed. Frankly, I was very upset last season when they kept him on the roster. I think they just did it because he was the punt protector. I don't know what's going to be this season. I'm not sure if they're going to keep him or not. To me, I see special teams only players as largely a waste of roster space, and you shouldn't carry too many of those. And when you already have Justin Hardy, who you're paying a lot of money, I want to see other players who can actually play the position that they're ostensibly part of and not just to play special teams. Davis just didn't show any of it. I mean, everything I gripe about Jordan Whitehead. I mean, can't take angles towards tackles, horrible angles in coverage, misses tackles left and right. I mean, Davis is on that, just that much worse. And so I'm not saying I never believe that a player can recover, because we do see it happen, but I would not put any money on Ashton Davis being that player.
But let me ask you, Rivka, just to make sure. But if he could clean all those things up you said, he could be a first-team All-Pro, right?
I mean, look, he certainly has the athletic talent for it. That's why they drafted him where they did.
Well, okay, let's go to the defensive line. I'm curious your thoughts on this. So the Jets moved some bodies out. Robert Saleh at the beginning of the offseason wanted to retain as much as possible. I don't blame him. They were the fourth best defense in the NFL last year, of course, try to retain. But they lost some key hog mollies on the defensive side of the ball. Nathan Shepard goes. Sheldon Rankins goes. And they bring in Quentin Jefferson and Al Woods, kind of the swap. Are they better off? Are they the same? Or are they worse off in your mind?
So I'm concerned. I'm not concerned about the loss of Shepard at all. I said good riddance. I'm glad that New Orleans signed him to the deal that they did, because it gives the Jets a better chance of a better comp pick. That the Shepard, I was just glad that they finally let him go. Rankins, I'm a little bit concerned about, because the problem with replacing one player with two, which is essentially what they did with Rankins, they replaced him with a combination of Al Woods and Quentin Jefferson, is that those players who are specialists are still going to end up playing a large chunk of snaps in the area that they do not play well in. I'm not as concerned about Woods as a pass rusher. I'm very concerned about Jefferson being on the field for run plays, because one of the reasons this is one of the areas I was glad to be proven wrong last year. I was very upset that they retained Rankins to begin with. I was hoping that they would let him go, because I felt that he was too expensive and he couldn't play the run at all. It was a pleasant surprise that he learned to be more disciplined and not just to shoot the gap without even paying attention to what was going on in the play. I'm very concerned that Jefferson is going to be one of those just shoot upfield, not pay any attention, and that the Jets' run defense is going to suffer for it. Jefferson was one of the worst run defenders at defensive tackle in the entire league for his whole career, pretty much. Now, it is true that he played two gapping style with Seattle. So putting him into a one gapping style will probably make him not quite as bad. But when you have a guy who's that bad, and I think last year with Seattle, he still ended up playing over 40% of his snaps were run defense snaps. It's scary, and that concerns me. Now, I would personally rather see JFM and even Clemens. I would like to see what they can do from the inside as run defenders above seeing Jefferson. JFM is definitely not nearly as good of a run defender from the inside as he is from the edge. I still think he might be better than Jefferson is. And the same thing for Clemens, especially if he really is in the 290s. I think he can probably hold his own more than Jefferson can from the middle. So I'm curious to see what the Jets end up doing with it. But Jefferson, for me, feels like a little bit of I'm not sure what to do with him, because JFM is a better pass rusher than him from the inside also. So I'm not sure.
Well, I will say, selfish. Michael Clemens is one of my favorite players on the team, and the way he walked it, I mean, come on, that was spectacular. I certainly could not have pulled that off with my fat dad bod, but the fact that Michael Clemens can, I'm just like, I see. I hope he's a monster. I hope, because again, he's living in Jets cult land of this guy we're like putting up, so Hard Knocks, all this other stuff. I hope he gets a lot of love too. I'm fascinated by a guy that would, he's a draft eligible prospect. He watches the draft in a dark room with no lights on himself. And then he was asked about it, and he just kind of like stares at you. I'm like, oh, okay, never mind, just kidding. So yeah, he's kind of interesting. All right, let's dabble with a couple quick things here. Hard Knocks, the Jets are on it, but I'm curious your take. You wrote about it. I tweeted out the clip about the Adam Schefter thing, and he says like, hey, Hard Knocks, go kick rocks, pal. You ain't gonna be filming us with the cutting of the players. And some people are split. Like, and I don't want to paint, my opinion all over this, because, like, I'm like, come on, don't be Sally's Jets. Just roll out there and don't worry about it, because, like, the fact that you're giving it even any airtime with this Schefter nuggets that he's gathering, you're wasting breath. Just, like, keep the main thing on all those T-shirts, and you'll be fine. but other people kind of rallied around it. Like this can be some sort of rallying cry, can help future players potentially coming to the Jets. Look at the Jets taking a stand. Where do you stand in all this?
So I'll be honest, I've never watched Hard Knocks in my life, so
Wow.
it's not something
Really?
that I will, because I'm covering the team and
course.
that's what I have to do. But I've never watched it before. I've never been interested in it. So this is not my style. So as a fan, just as an individual, I'm not a reality TV person. I find
really?
in general, I'm not. But that's a very personal opinion. As an analyst, I mean, I could see both sides. I heard some people say, Jets are, the players are going to be happy that the Jets don't want people to see,
Right.
People cut. I have a sneaking suspicion that they're voicing their opposition to it so that the media doesn't just say that it's all coming from Rodgers. I have a suspicion about that, because I know Rodgers would not be very happy about it. He told Bill Maher a few years ago that he is not a fan of Hard Knocks. So, I suspect that the team is showing a united front so that the media can't say, oh, look, Aaron Rodgers is spurning the media again.
Yeah.
Although, again, it could just be that Saleh himself is like, we don't want this. It's a distraction. Again, I do think it could be a distraction. I'm concerned about it, particularly with, I've been on the record criticizing Saleh for not disciplining his team enough. And I would be concerned about what Mekhi Becton would look like on the Hard Knocks cameras, or some of the other players who have just said and done stupid things in the public eye over time. Even Michael Carter, blocking people on social media. All of these things are going to get blown up, and I would just prefer not to see it. And so in that sense, I don't know if I per se agree with not being part of the, and not agree with the cameras. I would just want Saleh to be able to have enough of a handle on his team to say, okay, we're going to go in front of the cameras, but we're not going to let them have any drama.
All right, let me ask you, we have two more before we get you out of here. Mekhi Becton, Rich Cimini, who does the Flight Deck podcast, a really fascinating listen. His final thing, he said he did like all these different layered things, top five this, top five this, top five this. He said, here's my top 3 bold predictions. And I was like, whoa, mama. His boldest prediction, again, bold, so he doesn't say 100% it's going to happen, but like his bold prediction was that Mekhi Becton gets traded. And at first I'm like, that's crazy. And then the more I thought about it, with the potential volatility here of, hey, you're playing right tackle, he wants to play left tackle. What if Dwayne's not ready at the beginning of camp, which we should find out tomorrow with Robert Saleh speaking to the media? And if he's not ready and they put some warm body over there, and Becton's like, what the hell? I thought you said I could earn it. Like, it could get crazy pretty quick. So all of a sudden I went from, no, what? No, well, maybe. What do you give any credence to that potentially actually transpiring?
So actually, Michael wrote an article today with his bold predictions, and he wrote the same thing.
Wow.
I don't think he did it based on Cimini's. I don't even know if he was aware of Cimini's when he wrote it. I see both sides. When I first read it, I also was like, what would they be thinking?
Yeah.
And yet when you think about it, there's a few signs that could show that that's something they could consider. First of all, the fact that they have 5 tackles right now. The fact that they have 5, definitely leans towards that possibility, right? The fact that they drafted Carter Warren and they brought in Billy Turner means maybe, it could be just because they're trying to beef up the position because of what happened last season, but It could also be that they were, setting up a potential scenario where they could cut ties with Becton without, it being devastating to their team. Another signal for that would be just the way Saleh handled Becton's declaration that he's a left tackle by saying, go earn it. He's made it very clear that Dwayne Brown is going to be the left tackle. I mean, there's Becton can't earn it unless Brown is injured.
Right.
There's no chance of that, in my opinion. So, I mean, I think Saleh basically said, we love Dwayne and a bunch of other things. Yeah, Brown is going to be the left tackle. And so the fact that, again, the way that they're just handling it is kind of like, you go do your thing and you be a team player. And Becton has not shown any signs of being able to do that. And look, the Jets traded Elijah Moore for less than I feel that he was worth. I was a big fan of keeping him, first of all, as another threat, and second of all, to build his trade value and then trade him either in the mid-season or after the season, as opposed to trading him, when he's at a lower level of value. But they showed that they do not want players who are going to show up their team. And Becton has definitely done that, and not to the same level that Moore did, obviously, but he's certainly not shown that he's, he can be a team player. And so, I could see the Jets just saying, we don't want a player like this on our team, and going and saying, you know what, we're going to trade you. Now, I don't know if it would be the best idea, just because I think they need that depth. And I think also his potential to be, a very strong player. At the very least, I would say leave him around for the season. If he plays well, let him walk, get a comp pick for him, or tag him and trade him.
Sure.
Do whatever you can, even if you don't want to play him long term. Someone's going to pay for that kind of athleticism, and that just total beast mentality. And so I am more of a fan of keeping him around, kind of similar to what I said with Moore, but I could see it becoming an Elijah Moore situation where they just let him go and they trade him for whatever they can get from him.
Yeah, we'll see again if Saleh sticks his foot in his mouth, because again, by saying go earn it, and then well, you're not competing for this. Stay over there in that sandbox. They're gonna be like, what the hell? So it could cost him problems. Final one before we get you out of here, Rivka. This has been amazing. Okay, again, the reason I brought you on this show was because I'm like, wow, this woman and takes. Look at this thing. This is amazing. So give me something. Aaron Rodgers take. Inspired if you can, or something else for that matter. And it could be good, bad, indifferent. I don't care. But Aaron Rodgers, I can't believe we've gotten like 40 minutes plus here of a minimum Aaron Rodgers talk. God bless everybody else is doing that every minute of the day. So do you have a spicy Aaron Rodgers take? Good, bad, or indifferent?
Yes, I tend to hedge my bets when it comes to Rodgers, because I was on the record when the talk first started happening. Sure. I was not a huge fan of it. And then I sort of, warmed to it a bit. I went back and forth between him and Carr. I wasn't sure where I stood. Once they got him, obviously, it was like, okay, we're all in on this guy. Yeah. But, I think I'm more concerned than many other Jets people about the possibility that he's declined, simply because he did not look good before his thumb injury last year. He had a couple of, lackluster games. He made an absolutely horrific throw to Allen Lazard that was pick 6 against the Patriots. He had a few other, not such great plays. A lot of the plays last year that he made that were bad were based on decision making and not just based on, throw. So I'm a little bit hesitant about it. The one thing I will say with Rodgers, I'll tell you what I think. I think if the Jets offensive line gives him time to throw, gives him enough time to throw, and I'm not just talking about the rate of where he gets pressure. If you watch the Packers last year, I don't care what the numbers say, Rodgers did not feel like he had a good, he was being protected. If the Jets give him enough time to throw, I think Rodgers will play like a borderline top 5 quarterback in the NFL. As it is, I would still rank him in the top 6 or 7. I think he will play up to that standard if they give him time. If they don't give him time, I think we're going to see a season like last year. If not worse. Maybe not worse, because he still has a better supporting cast than last year overall. But I think we could see a season like last year. I really believe that the fate of the Jets offense comes down very largely to their offensive line, both when it comes to Rodgers and when it comes to the running game, and just everything being, okay. We saw in training camp last year that their offensive line did not gel, and it just carried straight over into the regular season. I really do believe that at age 39, he's not going to be able to just outrun. He used to be the guy. I loved watching Rodgers more than anyone else. Like, he was Patrick Mahomes before Patrick Mahomes, and his ability to just get out of pressure, run, make these insane throws on the move when he was being hit, high and low. He would just, in his younger years, he's not that guy anymore. He's 39 years old. You need to protect your quarterback. You protect your quarterback, he's going to, Garrett Wilson will go off for 1,500 yards. You'll have Davis and Lazard and, Hardman making his plays. I'm a big Tyler Conklin believer. I think that he's going to have a big bounce back year. So, I do think, but I think it all comes down to giving him time.
Again, to your point, if the Jets go from 33rd, and I'm aware there's 32 teams, if you go from 33rd in the quarterback power rankings to top 7, let's say, ESPN's league panel had him at 4, but let's just say 7, and you were 7-10. I mean, sweet jambalaya, move over. Who knows what the Jets could possibly accomplish if that is indeed the case, retaining of the other pieces to the puzzle. Rivka, this was enlightening. This was fun. It was awesome and long overdue, quite frankly. So it's awesome to check it off the bucket list and get you here on the program. Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun to talk about. And thank you. Just thanks for opening up your platform to me and to I think you had Blue It on. So just to X Factor people in general.
Yeah, I've got like a hit list going. I'm like, okay, Joe Blue. I'm like,
he's tough. He's tough to get because he's got a lot of other engagements. But yeah, I'm a little easier.
No, that's good. That's good to know. So I guess, booyah, we're going to have you on again, Rivka. That'd be amazing. Before we get you out of here, Jets X Factor, you see it right next to your name. Any plugs you'd like to give for the wonderful thing that you guys have all created? It's been a beautiful baby to watch over the last couple of years. It's grown up being one of the best, Joe Blewett would say the best Jets independent website out there on the planet.
So I would just say that I think that what we offer at Jets X Factor is a little bit more unique than many of the other sites. We're not just looking to give you a take that anyone and your mother can give. We try to back it up with stats and with film. Blewett, I believe, is the best film guy out there when it comes to just X's and O's and really understanding the depth of each position and what's going on. And Michael, and just in terms of Michael Nania, just in terms of his analytics takes and the creativity that he shows with his numbers. So if you really want to understand what's going on with the Jets and not just, what the fan hype and things like that, check out Jets X Factor because you're really going to love it. I personally, I'm there a year, but I lucked into joining what I consider the best Jets independent site on the internet. So come check it out.
There you go. Boom shakalaka. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Make sure you like the video. Hit subscribe down below for more New York Jets interviews and content. We appreciate it. Take care. We'll see you.